Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming here today. The purpose here today is to address a number of questions and to bring the public up to date with respect to what the circumstances are, the geological and hydrological circumstances are up on Washington Avenue. And I also, if there are residents who are living in the vicinity of the hole, the sinkhole, I'd want to thank you for your patience and your cooperation, okay, given the ordeal and any inconvenience, okay, that you've been subject to. What I did here today was have Ralph Swenson from our engineering department and some of the others, Dennis Larios, our engineer on the project, and also representatives from Public Works, the Superintendent Mike Shook, as well as Alan Winchell from the sewage treatment plant, all provide information so that I can really help frame the issue and reassure the public that we're on the right track with what we're trying to do with the problem up at Washington Avenue. I'll start off by saying what people are finding perplexing is the result of the city of Kingston, for want of a better explanation, is built on a rock, if you want to put it that way. You have a number of aquifers, you have natural springs, you have a sand to soil content that really isn't very helpful, okay, with these kind of geological and hydrological circumstances. And that's unfortunate, but that's the bottom line. Also, too, the city of Kingston historically did not have, up until a number of years ago, and I was part of this effort in the Court Counsel's office, any kind of stormwater local law which would essentially regulate the stormwater flow from various parts of the city, particularly the upper elevated areas. And when those upper elevated areas of the city were developed, without this local law, there was no attempt to regulate the stormwater runoff from upstream now through Tannery Brook or through the Main Street Brook, okay, and then consequently enter into our sanitary sewer line, which people also don't understand until recently, that we have a combined sewer system that accepts not only sanitary sewer, but also stormwater, which is wreaking further havoc and exacerbating an aging infrastructure of our sewer system to the point where, as we all know, we're not only subject to sinkholes, but we're also subject to these decaying lines. For instance, on Broadway and Grand Street, we're looking at upwards of $800,000 worth of repairs. So with that as a background and get a sense of perspective as to why we're in this situation, I'd like to just read from a report that, again, was prepared by our engineering department with the assistance of Dennis Larios and our public works superintendent and our engineering department, of course, with Ralph Swenson and Alan Abe. And bear with me, I do apologize because these glasses, I'm waiting for new glasses and I'm going to do the best I can with what I have on. Thank you. In 1909-1912, a deep tunnel was constructed on the Washington Avenue from Lucas to Lower Wilbur. The tunnel was constructed by the City of New York. At the time, it was referred to as the New York State Water Authority, which now is the DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection. And it was constructed in order to convey combined sewage from uptown Kingston to the Rondout Creek. The tunnel was constructed due to the fact that the City of New York was impounding the Esopus Creek for water supply purposes and reducing its assimilative capacity downstream. The tunnel has a depth of approximately 80 plus feet, 75 foot at roof, 82 feet at bottom, which is at the vicinity of the Tannery Brook crossing, which is just south of Linderman Avenue. The roof of the tunnel in this area is of a brick arch construction with timber trimming above to support the overburden during construction and subsequently left in place 100 years ago. In 1993, contractors working for the city installed a stormwater shaft at the Tannery Brook location to divert surface waters into the tunnel. This shaft is 30 inches in diameter and enters through the roof of the Washington Avenue tunnel. Soil borings taken at the time indicated a significant void area above the roof of the tunnel. The area immediately south of the stormwater shaft has experienced settlement problems over the years, and the DPW has repaired the road surface in this location from time to time. It should be understood that the Washington Avenue Tunnel serves as an important sanitary and stormwater conveyance function for much of the city, including the entire Washington Avenue corridor and uptown. There currently exist 3 stormwater shafts, one at Greenkill Avenue, one at Elizabeth Street, and one at the intersection with Tannery Brook. Each shaft is between 36 and 24 inches in diameter. These vertical shaft connections provide a stormwater outlet for runoff that would otherwise cause widespread flooding, property damage, and public safety hazards. In addition, the tunnel carries sanitary sewage flow from wards 1, 2, 9, and a portion of ward 4, depending upon weather conditions and flows. In March of 2011, the DPW responded to a settlement sinkhole condition that appeared on the west side of Washington Avenue, immediately south of the stormwater shaft. Several repairs and relocations were made to utilities in the area. Grouting was performed around the stormwater shaft in an attempt to seal leakage of groundwater along the outside wall of the shaft at a rock layer 62 feet below the street surface. The groundwater was carrying fine, silty soil into the tunnel and causing settlement at the street level. The leaking area that was identified by remote TV inspection was sealed as a result of the grouting operation. Other work performed in 2011 included the installation of steel sheeting to protect public utilities on the east side of Washington Avenue, pavement and curb restoration, shallow grouting to support a stormwater box culvert structure, and a soil boring to collect data for further analysis and monitoring of the situation. The street was fully reopened in the area on or about September 1st, 2011. The City of Kingston has monitored the surface elevations and settlements continuously since July 11th of 2011. The results of this monitoring showed very little settlement from July of 2011 through March of 2012, a period of 8 months which included Hurricane Irene. On March 13, 2012, dips began to appear in the road pavement in the same general area as the 2011 settlement. The dips were generally in the range of 1 to 5 inches. The DPW responded with asphalt shimming to level the street pavement and placed warning signs on the road accordingly. During the week of April 9th to the 13th, 2012, a visual inspection of the storm shaft and tunnel roof was conducted. During this inspection, a new leak of groundwater and soil was observed in the roof area of the tunnel. Flow was remotely observed to be intermittent, but ranging from 1 to 2 gallons per minute when flowing. This leak was coming from the east side of the tunnel in a new location. On the morning of Sunday, April 15th, a sinkhole formed in the east side of Washington Avenue, measuring approximately 2 to 3 feet in diameter and 7 feet in depth. Material from this sinkhole was immediately observed by TV inspection in the floor of the tunnel. Following the formation of the sinkhole and loss of material, the leak into the tunnel appears to have stopped. TV inspections performed on Monday, April 16th showed no additional leakage or soil material entering the tunnel. This section of Washington Avenue has been closed as it is not safe for vehicular travel at this time. The impacts. The loss of ground has resulted in a number of impacts that include the obvious and several others that are more obscure, including transportation. As we all know, we had to close Washington Avenue to through traffic between Linderman and State Route 32. All commercial vehicles have been redirected to Clinton Avenue. Utilities. Temporary disruption of domestic water. Natural gas, electric power, and communications have resulted from the abandonment or relocation of portions of distribution systems. Water mains have been capped and temporary service lines have been installed. Gas mains have been temporarily abandoned and natural gas service replaced with individual propane tanks, and new power poles have been installed with supported power, telephone, and cable rerouted. Public safety impact. Sidewalk access has been restricted in the work zone, as has the adjacent properties. Wastewater treatment plant. There has been an impact on our treatment plant. Sanitary conveyance system within the tunnel has resulted in operational difficulties. Basically, at this point, biological treatment at the plant has not been affected, as plant personnel have been able to sequester and remove the additional sediment load at the front end of the plant, and I'll get to that in a minute or two. There's a real concern that with the sediment potentially invading or encroaching the sanitary line, it could have potential very serious consequences on our treatment plant, okay, for a large portion of the city. And our treatment plant personnel are on it, okay, and we'll attempt to mitigate that potential serious problem, as I'll get to in a minute. In April and May, due to the settlement that had occurred in April and the new leak observed in the tunnel roof area, the city decided to perform additional testing and inspections, which included manual inspection of the Washington Avenue tunnel in the vicinity of the storm shaft to better observe and photograph the leakage area and to assess the structural integrity of the tunnel roof. Additional soil borings and soil tests were taken to determine means and methods of permanently stabilizing the road in the area of the storm shaft. Cone penetration testing was utilized to gather important information on soil bearing capacity, soil stratification, and pore water pressure. During the months of June and into July, work on the Washington Avenue tunnel and sinkhole problems continued in full force with the following. 5 additional cone test probes were installed around the sinkhole to better define the soil and groundwater conditions and the top of the rock elevation. Tunnel repair technologies were evaluated. Link pipe linear panels were selected to repair the Washington Avenue tunnel. 160 feet of linear panels were ordered for delivery, which I believe are en route, to repair the brick arch tunnel near the Tannery Brook shaft. I believe also, too, the materials, the actual liner, which is manufactured with a company in Toronto, it's the only company of its kind to be able to manufacture, okay, that lining to be able to repair this tunnel, which is stage 1 of the overall effort to deal with the sinkhole. Bids were submitted back a month ago, I believe Wednesday of this week. The bids were opened. By the end of this week, the contractor with the low bid will be selected. Utilities were removed or relocated during this period in June and July, including water mains, gas mains, overhead electric lines. The concrete box culvert, which was around the shaft in Washington Avenue in the sinkhole, was removed. A 24-inch diameter steel pipe was installed to bypass the Tannery Brook and sinkhole area. Some of you may observe who live up on Washington Avenue, okay, there's a pipe that goes across now the street, which what it's trying to do is bypass the flow of that runoff from the brook to not go into the shaft, which would further exacerbate, okay, the problems we have, okay, in the tunnel, and potentially also continue to exacerbate the addition of maybe some sediment into the sanitary line, which is, as I stated earlier, a serious concern. We made attempts to inspect more of the Washington Avenue with remote mobile video inspection equipment, but the equipment was unable to move through the tunnel because of the sediments at the floor of the tunnel. What's happening is the timbers I described earlier, which are the interior frame of the tunnel, are decaying over time, over 100 years, and collapsing. And with the additional water and runoff and sediment, it's causing that blockage, which is very difficult to get a camera, okay, in that location. So in sum, the city has taken all the necessary steps to ensure the safety of the public and protection of the property in the vicinity. And I thank, as I stated earlier, the cooperation of the property owners and do apologize for the inconvenience. But I was on the phone Wednesday with a professor of engineering at RPI. And I asked the good professor about this geological phenomena that I outlined earlier and what measures were taken to be able to address the situation. He indicated that at this point, based on the information I provided and given all the other factors, the natural factors, be it of the runoff from the brook, the aquifers, the natural springs, the soil content, the fact that you have a man-made tunnel 80 feet down to 100 feet down under Washington Avenue. He indicated that the city at this point is using all its best practices that are available with today's technology and today's information to be able to resolve the problem at hand. Also, too, there was a suggestion to reach out to the Army Corps of Engineers, which we have done. I spoke recently to a civil engineer from the National Guard, commander of that unit, and he was the commander of the unit who imploded the King's Inn building on Broadway. And he indicated to me as well, too, that it would appear this kind of project is not within the realm of the expertise of the Army Corps of Engineers. So suffice to say, I want to assure the public that the city is doing everything it can to use our experts, our hydrologists, our geologists, our geotech engineers, our civil engineers, our engineers in our department, to be able to ensure that we're not missing anything, okay, when trying to resolve this very complicated problem, which again has been exacerbated by the runoff that comes from upstream, okay, and has been entered into over time into the shaft and down into the tunnel. Now, with regard to the sanitary sewer issue, and the concern I had outlined earlier, at this point, there's efforts to minimize any accumulation of the excessive silt or the inorganic material being discharged to the collection system. They're implementing a system of routinely operating our Wilbur Avenue combined sewer facility, which pumps in order that the collection lines in Wilbur Avenue will siphon, might be able to deal with the potential velocity to minimize any deposit of the organics in the collection system. And what we're also doing is, as it was noted here by our consultant to our operator, Alan Winchell, is that we will be scheduling a cleaning of the grit chambers at the Wilbur Avenue combined sewer overflow structure with our vacuum truck as soon as we're able to incorporate the task into their schedule. So where we're at is, as I stated earlier, the bids have been received as of Wednesday of this week. The materials are on order. They're very specialized. Stage one will necessitate the contractor literally putting a crew 80 feet to 100 feet down under Washington Avenue through that shaft to have access to the tunnel. Before that can be done, it's my understanding, according to the engineer, that the contractor who accepts the bid will have to do a safety and risk assessment, and then put in plans, safety means that if God forbid something would happen, okay, it passes muster, it's in compliance with OSHA. OSHA has very strict, obviously, standards and regulations to ensure the safety and well-being of any human being who's going to get into a shaft between, 30 inches in diameter and go down 80 feet with an oxygen tank, equipment, and then water running over their head in pitch dark, okay, with the potential of methane gas, also, or CO2 gas in that shaft. So it's an extremely dangerous condition for anyone to work in. And the concern I have too is, and there's been some discussion with engineering and myself, as to the necessity of potentially installing a second shaft to provide additional access, okay, to the tunnel for its repairs and relining. At this point, that discussion will take place, I believe, with the contractor who will be selected to perform the work, and it will be up to the decision of the contractor with our engineering team. The only downside of that would be it puts off the repairs, because it takes X amount of time to order the pipe and the materials necessary to construct a wider shaft, which would be between 6 and 8 feet in diameter. So suffice to say, that issue is going to be further discussed with the contractor who is going to be selected to perform the work. In the meantime, I've had discussion with the fire department, Chief Reinhardt, who's here today, as to if it will come a time where the property owners, okay, may have to vacate their homes during the course of the repairs. At this point, we don't think that that's necessary. On an ongoing basis, we have structural engineers and our hydrologists and our geologists who are in fact checking each property to ensure its structural integrity. I've been up there a number of occasions. I was over there this weekend and spoke to some of the contiguous property owners, and I assured them, okay, that we are monitoring the situation for their safety and well-being. The chief also, Chief Reinhardt, has done an assessment to ensure and ascertain that any emergency vehicles, okay, with respect to, God forbid, if there was a fire or some circumstances, our fire department and emergency personnel will have access to those homes surrounding the sinkhole. So as you can see, we're doing everything we can to, in the short term, mitigate the expansion of the sinkhole by putting in that bypass line and pump, and by removing off the top of the shaft. If you saw the crane that was there the other day, the heavy concrete that surrounded the shaft, which was putting a lot of weight on that shaft, which then would be disastrous if in fact, okay, there was any damage to that shaft, which would then obviously prohibit access to fixing the tunnel. So I've said this now, this will be the third time. I thank any of the residents who are in that vicinity for their cooperation and for their patience. And I assured one of the residents who's literally, unfortunately, well, two of the residents who unfortunately are right in front of the sinkhole, that the city will do everything in its power to ensure that their homes are protected, their well-being and safety, okay, is protected, and the damages caused by this circumstance, I'm going to do everything I can to make it right, okay, on behalf of the city, for those residents, for those taxpayers. And I know today there's someone in the room, and I know, unfortunately, her water main broke, and it created quite a bit of damage with respect, okay, to her property, and I'm sorry for that. And unfortunately, it was quite a mess from what I understand, and I apologize, and I know there was damage to personal belongings. And again, I assure that property owner that we're going to do everything we can to make that right as well. So, with that, if you have any questions that would be